We are at the what I refer to as the UnderTakers house. Um, the big oak tree in the front yard is one of the largest oak trees in the Low Country. It's about a 2/3 of the size it used to be. It was hit by lightning in the '80s and split in half, and luckily it survived. Um, the Undertaker's house, in my opinion, is the best example of an oyster house left on the island. And the story of the oyster houses is these are houses that were uh, put, built by the freed slaves uh, in the late 1800s when they got the first job they ever had, which paid them money, which was the oyster industry. Now, they're not called oyster houses because they're built of oyster shell. They're called oyster houses because the money to build them was derived from usually working in the oyster industry on Daufuskie. There were maybe 7 oyster factories out here, all of them on the what's now the Cooper River or the Intercoastal Waterway, which was the Cooper River and still is, but in other words, on the west side of the island. And the story behind this house being built in the oyster industry is the oysters out around here are saltier than any other oysters, and for that reason, they uh, they were sold all over the world, literally all over the world. And a lot of people say the Tsar of Russia loved Daufuskie Island oysters. Um, what happened with that, though, is uh, progress came to Savannah, Georgia. They built factories along the Savannah River that polluted the Savannah River, and through its estuaries flowed into the oyster beds of Daufuskie and contaminated them. In about 1950 or so, uh, the federal government tested them and said they couldn't be sold anymore, closed the beds down. At that time, there were 2,000 to 2,500 people, black people, living on this island. And the population dropped to about 100 in no time at all. And so, really, after that, the reason everybody left is there really was not a good way to make a living. The 100 people that stayed are the people that I got to know as a young man, and they were what people refer to as Gullah these days. Um, Also, the Undertaker uh, uh, would embalm people in his house. And my buddy Jake Washington told me that actually a whole bus full of tourists that when he was a little boy he used to bomb people with the Undertaker. He said he would. He said he and the Undertaker would lay him out on the table, and they'd take all their clothes off, and they'd take butter and pepper and coffee grounds and rubs their body down, and then take turpentine and puts it to their lips, and they drank every drop. Now I don't know how they drank the turpentine, but that's how they would embalm them in the house, in this house, and then they would carry them uh, to their bed, whatever house they lived in. They would carry them and put them back in the bed. That's where you'd view the body. You know, a lot of this seems crazy, but it kind of makes sense if you live on an island and you don't have really much boat transportation. You got to have somebody to do that. And viewing the bodies in the bed has always made sense to me. When I was a young man and my grandmother passed away, they put her in left in the coffin, but put her in the living room of the house for everybody to say goodbye. So anyway, um, look at the oyster house, look at the tree. The reason the oyster house is there is because of the tree. When these people, the black folks, finally had enough money to build a house, the major farming, the cotton growing and all that was at an end, and so everything was either basically a cotton field with big oak trees in it, and they would run to the oak trees and build their houses under the oak trees. So when you see a big oak tree around here, rest assured at one time there was a little house under it.